You're listening to Bedroom Beethovens, where notable music makers break down stories accompanied by songs and melodies documenting growth through their 10,000-hour journey. And me? Well, my name is Cello, your host.
I am a bedroom Beethoven.
Hey, let's switch things up this week a little bit with a little drum and bass. Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to episode 141. My guest this week is
My name is Fred V. I was in a drum and bass duo for about 10 years called Fred V and Grafix with my good friend Grafix. We've done collaborations with Sub Focus, Kelly from Block Party, done a bunch of remixes for loads of people, Emily Sandé, Wretch 3-2 and Ed Sheeran. We did that ages ago. Rudimental. Yeah, I didn't bring the I'm not on the Wikipedia page, so I might be missing some off, but yeah. And then I've recently become a solo artist. Recently released an album which is out now called Radiate. But yeah, I'm really happy for the invite for this podcast because I checked out a few other episodes and it seems really cool.
Every DJ knows this story. It's a tale that's been told and lived by thousands of DJs for years, and it will never change. Growing up, you talk to your friends and family about how you dream of traveling the world and seeing the sights. And for nearly a decade, Fred V wasn't just Fred V, he was Fred V and Grafix, and the two built a brand of melodic liquid drum and bass music. But in 2019, he decided to try out a solo career. Actually, they both did. And Fred V's new project Radiate is out now, and Lottie Jones swings by the podcast to add a few layers to the conversation. But before we jump into that, before we do, if you like this podcast, it would mean a lot to me. Patreon.com/BedroomBeethovens for just $1 or $2. No expensive crazy tiers, just a few bucks, cheaper than your morning cup of coffee. And it gets you access to episodes early, and the perks are cheap. It keeps the show ad-free, and you're in an elite club, and not some elitist one. You know, we have fun here. We just talk about life. We don't get into the debates or the top 10 lists or anything like that. So thank you for tuning in, sticking around, subscribing, all that good stuff. BedroomBeethovens.com is the website, so feel free to check that out too, buy a shirt, etc., etc. Okay, enough about that. I know why you're here. It's episode time. Hey, you're in my lane because I heard you hosting the hospital podcast the other week, and you got a good voice on the mic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I was reading the comments and someone said something like, "Oh, I'm not going to lie, I didn't expect that voice," and I've no idea what they expected, but I don't even know if that was a compliment from them or not. But thank you for your compliment. So.
Yeah, save some talent for the rest of us, Fred. Come on. Well, I'm a long-time listener, decades long, well, not decades, but a decade. And although we are known New Zealand, the U.S. appreciates you taking the time to sit down with me.
Oh, wicked. Yeah. I mean, I would love to come to the US more often. I know it's like really hard to get visas for America at the moment, but I definitely need to tour there ASAP, basically.
Well, I hear that Dilla was an influence. Was that you that said that, or was that Grafix that said that?
That would have been Grafix, but I do like Dilla as well. Like all our like our early stuff before we got signed to Hospital was like very sample based. And I mean, yeah, I'm kind of bringing a little bit more of that in again, but I guess more like sampling, like jamming of myself, I guess. But yeah, like all our early stuff before we got signed to Hospital was like there'd be like tons of I mean I probably shouldn't name any of the people we sampled, but like yeah, there'd be like tons of uncleared stuff in there, and like yeah, like there was definitely like a hip hop influence, like Premier for sure.
Yeah, his brother was on or Adilla's brother was on this podcast a few.
Really? That's sick.
It's crazy that his brother's influence like stretches to a different genre in another country, you know? And
yeah.
I know the first track that you guys made had a sample of Everlong from the Foo Fighters. You know, has the public listened to that yet, or is it myth yet to be heard?
Funnily enough, I think so Grafix was doing a bunch of live streams like I think about a year ago, and he did like a bit of a throwback special, and I think he played it. It's really funny because it was just like an acoustic version of Everlong. Yeah, it's like it's really weird to think about. Like I'm in the room at the moment at my parents' house, like where we made that first tune that sampled the Foo Fighters. So yeah.
Would I be surprised to find out how easy it is to take like a rock song, acoustic or regular, and remix it into another genre? Like I know bands approach your label and ask to be remixed all the time, but maybe some songs are harder to remix than others.
I mean, with drum and bass, it all just depends on the speed, really. Like sometimes it's like super easy. Like I mean, like I think that Foo Fighters song is like the perfect speed because it's just got that kind of like fast, kind of rocky. I don't know the exact speed, but it's probably like 160 or in that kind of ballpark. So yeah, it's usually pretty easy. But the hardest thing with remixing as a drum and bass artist is when you get asked to remix like a tune that's like 110. So like if you slow down the vocal to 87 to make it halftime, then it feels a bit too slow. But then if you speed it up to 170, then it just feels like really sped up. So that's always the hardest thing. But yeah, rock is usually a bit easier, to be honest.
And back in those early days, so your first ever release with Grafix was kind of this Outcast speaker box, The Love Below, where you had a song on one side and he had one on the other. Was that ever a conversation where, well, we don't actually have to separate. We can kind of stay together, but still release our own music? Or is that kind of unorthodox?
It was kind of weird how we became a duo, just because I guess we had like similar sounds and we were making a bunch of collabs, but like when we signed to Hospital, I think that was the moment when we kind of actually became a duo. When we kind of had the initial kind of breakup conversations, we did like starting other aliases alongside Fred V Grafix, just because like we've just both got like a lot of music in us that I do think it was a good decision to split up, just because it's very hard to fit it all into like one alias. But yeah, no, we that would have been an interesting idea, like still kind of releasing as like an Outcast situation. But yeah, no, we didn't really consider that.
And you mentioned Hospital Records. I'm a newcomer to it. I know that they're a very storied label, but I was curious, like, when you get signed halfway through university, was there a crossroad between finishing and signing to that label?
I think we got signed like in like November of that, like so right at the beginning of the third university year. I feel like we were both doing music technology and like both finding it like not especially difficult, to be honest. Like it's like I think maybe some of those kind of courses, because they're like quite new or something, or maybe because the technology is like constantly developing, the assignments and stuff like that never really seemed that hard. So like, yeah, we never really like, we were going to uni together in Bath, but yeah, like we never really considered just not finishing, because like I said, like we'd already done 2 of the 3 years, so it was easy enough to finish.
It's really funny though, because they in the degree plan they promise professional placement, and it's an optional placement year, and it provides you with the opportunity to identify, apply for, and secure professional experience. And it normally comprises, you do this 3-year program, and then you can opt in where where they actually promise professional placement over a 9-month period in your last year. And the whole point is to demonstrate your ability to secure and sustain graduate level employment. So you kind of like, being at that crossroad and signing to a label might have pissed off a lot of people. Like, damn, he kind of fast tracked out of here.
Yeah, like I mean, it's a funny one because like obviously like I like know loads of people in the industry now, and like it's actually quite rare that like the people I guess doing well or whatever have actually been to university and are like educated in that way. Like there's just so much more like self-taught kind of that's just how people learn generally. I mean and yeah, like I wouldn't have said like it was like a waste of time or anything. Like it was pretty like a very like life-changing kind of, it's that age where you're developing, like when you're 19 years old. So I wouldn't say it was like a mistake to go, but it's definitely like I think we probably would have both done pretty well without having gone to uni, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, if the university program was super easy and then you signed to the label, you felt like you signed before you properly had time to develop your sound because you were so young. Maybe you felt you were green, or maybe you and Grafix were making bad music, but it was still a leap of faith to sign a deal and allow the label to give you that room to get better.
Yeah, like I definitely felt that. Like I guess everything seems quite different now just because there's so many more like YouTube, like online resources for people to learn just production. But like back then, like I guess like 2010 or 11 or whatever, like there was so many, like it was so much harder to like learn how to like mix down a tune well, and like yeah, like even yeah, when we got signed I definitely didn't feel like I just felt like everyone else on the label was like way better than us, So yeah, but I guess we sort of knew that like being on Hospital, they'd be able to kind of like guide us and yeah, like mentor us, I guess. So yeah.
And then there's this really big awards like the Drum and Bass Arena Awards, and you win Best Newcomer Producer DJ around that time, shortly thereafter. So did that start to bring validation, or you had just a little bit of imposter syndrome still?
Yeah, definitely had imposter syndrome. Although it was like a newcomer award, so it wasn't. I don't know, like there wasn't like too much like pressure, I guess.
Well, the following year, Etherwood wins, so maybe Forest Fires was no accident.
Yeah. It's so he's like one of my favorite people, So yeah, he definitely deserved that.
Starlight guides the way. My feet struggle to touch the ground. Now we spin out of control. It's you I cannot do without, and I refuse to let this go, and I refuse to let this go, and I refuse to let this
So I mean, it's quite scary to not be able to get something sounding right and thinking, man, have I just been getting lucky all these years? Maybe I'm dealing with a little bit of imposter syndrome. But 10 plus years in the game with this new record, it's safe to say you no longer have any of those jitters. You're probably pretty confident in the musical direction that you want to take.
Like writer's block and stuff like that, in terms of like sometimes you do think, oh, how am I going to like follow this up? Like, could I make something this good again, sort of thing? And that's definitely how it felt like at the beginning. But then I think now, you get to a stage where you know that you can just kind of trust the process. And I think, yeah, as long as you're kind of putting the hours in, kind of getting enough kind of influences and listening to other music and stuff like that, then you can like get something out eventually, I guess. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned process, because Grafix said for him that his process changed a lot. When you were in a duo for as long as you guys were, you started to get used to each other's ways. So his strategy, and I'm not sure it mirrored yours, was to be self-aware of your strengths and then know his weaknesses. That essentially saying that he used you to offset his weaknesses and vice versa. So as soon as you're back on your own, you start to recognize those shortcomings.
I feel like I've been forced to grow like a lot in the last like 3 years from being a solo artist. But like there were definitely like, I remember when we made our second album, Oxygen, that like that it very much like at that time I was just focusing like all my time on writing top lines and songwriting, and really like not focusing on any like mix down or production kind of stuff. And I do remember thinking at one point, like, wow, like if we if we went solo at that point, it would have been like Josh's stuff would have just sounded like it's so much better than mine. And I do still think like he's like a much better engineer in a lot of ways than I am. So yeah, like it's just been a massive learning curve, but it like in a good way. Like I feel like now like I'm like, yeah, just a lot better than I was like even like, you know, like a year ago. Like I listened to my sketches from then, and I don't think they're like as like nice and punchy as they are now or whatever. So yeah, it's good to be growing, I guess.
Is it kind of weird to get like the blunt part of the reception? Like if a track is good or bad, you used to split credit, but now it's all you.
Yeah, that's definitely the other thing. You can't blame the other one for you know making those decisions. Yeah, no, that's hard as well. Yeah, like I mean, because you always read YouTube comments and stuff like that, so that can be annoying. But I don't know. I don't really like let that sink in too much. I think if you're like taking YouTube comments too seriously, you just need to like meditate a little bit more, or at least that's what I do anyway.
Well, I wanted to get a few questions on just the genre as a whole. I don't know if you've noticed, but I would say about 85% of the people I have on are mostly different genres or hip. But I remember, you know, I was getting a tattoo once, and my tattoo artist, he's very well known, and you know, he's 30 years in the game. He's revered, and I remember asking him like, "Hey, you know, is Kat Von D and all these TV tattooers, you know, are they really good?" And he was like, "Oh, they're shit. They're shit tattooers." And I was taken aback because these are the most famous tattooers in the world. They're on TV every week, you know. And I was thinking, does that analogy translate to what you do? Like if I look at the top of the mountain, the Grammy award-winning DJs, the Armin van Buuren, the Tiestos, the Diplos, the Andy C's, the Pendulums, in this genre are the most mainstream guys, the most talented. Because if we're talking about like pop music and hip hop, I know the answer. But, you know, is David Guetta really the best?
I personally wouldn't say David Guetta is the best, but I guess that's a different genre, subgenre, I guess. I mean, I would probably say yeah, like I think the best, the biggest drum and bass DJs are generally like the best DJs. I definitely think there's like a ton of like really underrated people, and there's always like I guess the thing of like who's like kind of hot right now and is just kind of doing well on all the lineups and everything, and might just have a bit of clout in that way that maybe like isn't as warranted or whatever. But yeah, like I would for the most part, yeah, say that the best drum and bass DJs are pretty talented.
I think that's really comforting because because in like hip hop, the best artists don't necessarily sell the most. It's kind of a mixed bag. But in your genre, if the hardest working, most talented people are at the top of the mountain, that it gives you a very you can strive for success in a very like truthfully. You know, you're not going for clout. You're not a fraud. So the hard work is really rewarded in a truthful sense. So that's comforting to hear.
I'd say it's generally like that. I mean, it's kind of it's a hard question to answer, really. I mean, like as you can tell from my music, like my personal taste is a lot more like just musical chord driven than like a lot of the drum and bass that's really popular. But there's so much of the heavy stuff that I just like don't have any idea how to make, I guess. So I never like I guess like disrespect it in any way. So.
When I guess put the genre under a microscope, I find myself being really naive. Like it might sound dumb, but is it a carefully curated process to find like a vocalist for drum and bass? Because I'll give you my perspective and you tell me how off I am. But I think before like Calvin Harris came along, I didn't know that you could put a Rihanna or a Katy Perry in like an electronic dance song. I thought like Ellie Goulding were like tailor made for it. Like you needed a certain vocalist. Like Taylor Swift's voice wouldn't mesh well with drum and bass, but Lottie Jones is perfect. Or pertaining to your new record, the growth of the liquid style of drum and bass is very jazz influenced. So it makes sense that Saya, a trained jazz vocalist, is on the track. So that makes sense. But I guess when you're setting out making drum and bass and you have a musical direction in mind, do you need a certain type of vocalist? Or you can make anyone who can sing fit that mold. It's up to your talent.
I think the reason I like drum and bass or making drum and bass in the first place is just that you can like put anything on it. Like it's just basically like a template, like you could have like, I guess like a rock influence drum and bass tune, like we were kind of saying earlier. But like I that's kind of how I think about it, and I kind of almost think of myself as more of like a pop music producer in a lot of ways. Like there's a lot of tunes I've written a bit like that. Like some of the stuff on the second Fred V Grafix album is very much just like it's just all about the song, I guess, and you could take that song and not have it as a drum and bass tune and just have it as like a kind of like ballady like pop song, I guess. But yeah, that's kind of so I always feel like there's just kind of complete freedom in terms of getting like a jazz vocalist or anything like that. And like I mean it's sometimes you have to kind of remember that when you're in the studio with someone that isn't like a massive drum and bass head, they might be a bit like shocked at how fast it is, or like the music might just be a lot more like dense than what they're used to in terms of like how like full the track sound and stuff like that. So you have to kind of like tailor that session and say like, right, let's just make this like kind of minimal like 87 BPM pop song, like sort of knowing that eventually I'll put a drum and bass spin on it.
Yeah, I think you hit gold with Lottie Jones because she has like this really soft voice, but she's able to keep it with that BPM.
Yeah, like I mean, she's definitely one of my favorite singers to work with.
Waiting for you, I feel like I'm lost underneath these clouds. Think I'm ready to hear. All I want is to be back. Take me out of this place. Show me all of your sky. I'm still calling your name. I'm ready to fly. Right into your atmosphere. Dreaming of your sky.
And I mean, I've always kind of gravitated towards those kind of like breathier vocals. They've always just I guess stood out to me as just coming across like less cheesy. I mean, I've always thought like that's why like Amy J. Price from our second album just absolutely smashed it. She's just got such a nice tone and yeah, just delivered everything super nicely. So yeah.
Terrific. Yeah, and I want to give you the floor to tell people about the new album. Anything that you and I didn't cover, anything you feel is important.
Yeah, like okay, well, so my new album Radiate came out in August. Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite things I've ever done. Like having the 3 Fred V Grafix albums made in the kind of run up to it, or in the 10-year period before, I guess, like that really gave me like I guess a kind of benchmark of something I wanted to kind of like strive for. I hope I've managed to do that. There's a lot of other influences in terms of I've tried to make everything sound really organic. I bought loads of strange instruments and weird percussion instruments and stuff like that to hopefully make it sound quite unique. And I hope everyone likes it.
Do you still have like at this point in your career, do you have free reign? Like I know Hospital Records was kind of loungecore when they started, and now they're more a modern musical style of drum and bass. But like if you say, hey, I want to incorporate my ideas, some Led Zeppelin influence, some Jimi Hendrix, do they allow you to, throw the kitchen sink at it and allow you to do what you want to do? Do you have full autonomy nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, like they can sometimes like steer things quite hard. Like it's mainly like I would say like yes, for sure, like, and definitely like to a bigger degree than basically any other like label that I'm aware of, I guess. I mean, I've only really been signed to Hospital, so it's not like I have like a huge amount of experience, but I do I hear stories about other labels not being quite as like open to different sounds. Like they're always like very keen to make you kind of like constantly reinvent yourself and just keep growing, which is really cool.
Have you been able to catch up with either Chrissy Chris or Groove Rider and say, hey man, look how far I've come?
Not recently, but I love seeing those guys. Like I always I don't know, like I always think about how like the more just a lot of the early successes you get like emotionally are just like just as good or even better than some of the like bigger successes further down your career. Like I remember like the feeling of both like Groove Rider and Chrissy Chris, like when they the first like Radio 1 plays I ever got from them was like just I don't know, like I felt like I scored the winning goal at Wembley, like it's just such a big buzz, like and it just yeah, like Radio 1 and 1Extra back then were just the absolute I don't know, I guess just the most relevant thing to be on. Like I don't think radio is nearly as important anymore, but like yeah, back then it was just amazing. So yeah.
But we've come full circle for sure. And I appreciate you being here and chatting with me. And I know we're here to talk about the new album, but I also got to say happy 10th anniversary to one of my favorite tracks, Angry Jazzer.
Oh, wow. I'm amazed that you know that one. That's, yeah, like I actually tried to make like a kind of remake of that a few years ago. But I might have to go back in on that. Like that's, yeah, that's a cool tune. It very, like, I guess 2000, like mid 2000s jump up influenced. So yeah.
Music to my ears. Well, Fred V, thank you so much for being here, man. It was a pleasure.
Oh man, thanks so much for having me.